Prime Minister Mark Carney plans to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping while the pair are at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum later this week in South Korea. We're going to get some further insight on this from Jacques Shore, a government affairs and trade partner at Gowling WLG. Good to have you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Good to speak with you, Lindsay.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. It's been years since the two countries have really talked. How significant is this upcoming meeting between China and Canada?
Well, look, I mean, there have been some significant ups and downs in that relationship. It seems that every 5 years, we need to really look at ourselves in the mirror and say, how do we actually figure in with China? And we have to figure that out. Obviously, these are sensitive moments as we really reflect on how best to continue the incredibly important trade relationship that we have with the United States, which is really the envy of the world in so many ways, while at the same time you're recognizing that there are challenges in dealing with China, not simply because of the way in which the United States might be watching us as to how we deal with China, but because of the kind of things that for us is important in terms of our own national interests. So these are serious discussions which will take place. And I do think that if we move the needle, it'll probably be done cautiously and slowly in a way that serves our interests, but at the same time, carefully reflects on what we do with the United States.
You talk about our own national interests. Like right now, there's 100% tariffs from China on Canadian seafood, canola products, agricultural products. Are those some of the sectors, I guess, that maybe Canada will be looking to discuss with China in terms of maybe lowering those 100% tariffs?
I think so. Those are extremely important. But then again, they will be looking to us in terms of how we look at, electronic vehicles, EVs. I mean, clearly, the Chinese have vehicles to sell and at cost significantly less than others. So, yes, those will be among them. I mean, when we look at pork, we look at some of the other fields which have really affected our agricultural sector. We would love to see some wins. We're in that moment right now where, we are very interested in trade diversification. It's in our interest to do that. While 80% of our trade is with the United States, and again, I repeat, the envy of the world, because we have CUSMA, and 93% of the goods that basically trade are essentially tariff-free. We do know that we need to work more closely with Europe. We have to actually build stronger trade ties and bridges there. I see that actually going on right now in my practice quite actively. We're looking at Japan. Japan is another country that wants to work with us. You look at the success of being able to look to that country in terms of our LNG exports. So I think that we are open to doing business with the world. But at the same time, I reiterate that, look, there's a disappointment of the last few days where we look at the president who's decided he would like us to now have another 10% tariffs imposed on us, which is a real significant penalty. Maybe not so much even on us, but obviously I think to those in the United States that recognize the strength of this very, very special partnership that we do enjoy.
Yeah, that additional 10%, I should say, not in effect yet. It hasn't been on paper. It's just something Donald Trump said. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. But he has ended talks in the meantime. So these conversations between Canada and China, how do you think that could affect Canada's relationship with the U.S.?
Well, I think we're going to be very careful. I think we have a prime minister that is measured in terms of how he addresses issues. You can see that he's taking, I think, what is a long game approach. We're not really, look, what we would not want to have is any additional retaliation or thought of a negative approach by the Americans in terms of what we do with the Americans. And I think with the Chinese, I think we have to be careful. I think that, with respect to, canola, with respect to some of the other fields where we, I have to say fields of agriculture, technology elsewhere, mining, those are all areas which would certainly be of of interest to China. But at the same time, I think it's all reviewed very carefully against the backdrop of where we sit with the United States and our other allies, because they're in the same situation, I think, as well. I think we're all very carefully treading water at the moment, looking at how we move forward in terms of how we build a new set of trading relationships, while also doing everything we can to protect and preserve the relationship that we have with the United States on trade.
Right, because I know you talked about how Canada needs to diversify when it comes to trade. Mark Carney was talking about that a lot last week as well. He's been talking about that for months, actually. But how much can Canada actually diversify away from the U.S. when it comes to trade? Obviously, we're never going to have no trade with the U.S.
Well, okay, if I had my wish list, Lindsay, I would probably say I'd want to continue having 80% of trade with the United States and then add another 60% trade elsewhere. I want to grow the pie. I think that's where our interests really lie. And I think that at the end of the day, we have many friends in the United States that would want to see us actually at least get back to where we're at in a more, how can I say, collegial, friendly, allied approach. I have to add that I did look over very carefully some of the quotes of President Reagan from way back in 1987 when he spoke to our joint session of our parliament, when he spoke in Quebec City at one point either. He was certainly of the view that the trading relationship between Canada and the United States was extremely important. He was very, very open-minded in terms of recognizing the value of that and spoke extremely warmly of what we've achieved together. I want to say that I'm going to be confident that that is something that ultimately the White House will recognize, that other friends of ours, the United States, will emphasize those points. We're right now in the middle of a significant, how can I say, baseball series with the World Series. I would like to say, if we're looking at this, let's look at this in the context of at least 9 innings. You might sometimes have extra innings in that, but we're just moving along pretty carefully in terms of each of those innings and where we sit. And I don't think we should be overambitious in terms of where we are, in terms of pushing timelines. I think these are the things that we need to do with carefully. These are also not regular trade negotiation. Trade negotiations are usually very detailed, very, very specific. We're also involved in a political negotiation where the United States is, I think, being careful in terms of how they are moving forward, whether they want to take these steps that are more protectionist. But and in the long run, I think that is going to be very much of where we, fit into that. But there are Americans that we should be talking to also, talking about the strength of how we benefit on both sides of the border by making things together, by strengthening our opportunities together. And I think that is in the long game of what we're looking to do.
Okay, Jacques Shore, Government Affairs and Trade Partner at Gowling WLG. Great to have you. Thanks for taking the time.